Intro. Before we dive into tonight's terrifying tale, make sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us bring you more spine-chilling stories. Drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from and what time it is on your end. Let's see who's brave enough to watch this at 3 a.m. The rain had just begun to fall in slow, deliberate drops, the kind that echo against the glass and remind you of nights when something is watching from outside. The old house, on the edge of Willow Creek, stood silently against the storm, its broken shutters rattling with every gust of wind. Few dared to even glance at it while passing by, for the stories tied to its walls had long stained the memories of the town. Inside that forgotten house, hidden beneath decades of dust and silence, sat a doll that had outlived generations of owners and taken far more than it had ever given. It was porcelain, delicate in its craftsmanship, with eyes too sharp and too alive to belong to something lifeless. The locals whispered that those eyes never dulled, that even when the rest of the doll cracked and wore away, the eyes remained bright, glassy, and unblinking. Its smile, faint and crooked, seemed to stretch wider when the night deepened. They said the doll was not made for a child nor for play. It was crafted with intent, with darkness stitched into its very seams. Whoever held it too long felt their joy begin to fade, their health wither, and their soul slowly pulled away. Parents who bought it for their daughters spoke of nightmares, of their children waking in the night, screaming about whispers in the dark. Some children claimed the doll moved when no one was looking, tilting its head, shifting its hands, dragging itself closer to the bed while the house slept. The first tragedy came in 1923, when the Henderson family purchased the doll from an antique fair. Their little girl, Clara, adored it instantly. She dressed it, fed it, and whispered secrets to it as though it were alive. Within weeks, Clara changed. Her laughter dimmed, her cheeks grew pale, and her eyes, once warm and innocent, became vacant pools of silence. She spoke less and less to her parents and more to the doll, until one night her mother awoke to the sound of Clara's voice echoing through the halls, low, guttural, and not her own. When they burst into her room, Clara was gone. Only the doll sat neatly in the center of her bed, its crooked smile fixed beneath those glassy eyes. Clara was never seen again. The family abandoned the house not long after, but the doll remained, waiting, patient, and hungry. Over the decades, it passed from hand to hand, always leaving ruin behind. A young woman who bought it for her collection was found hanging from the rafters with the doll in her lap. A widower who kept it in a glass cabinet was discovered with his wrists slit open, the doll's head turned toward his corpse, though no one remembered leaving it that way. And then there were the children, always the children. Each time a child came into possession of the doll, they spoke of voices, of a friend who promised them things adults never could. But the promises came with a price, and the price was always blood. By the 1980s, the doll was infamous. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and collectors of cursed objects all sought it, convinced they could contain it, study it, even profit from its horrors. But the doll chose its victims carefully. It never revealed its full malice at once. It played with them, lured them deeper until escape was impossible. One investigator filmed himself leaving the doll in a locked room. He placed cameras around it, confident that he would capture proof of its movements. For 3 nights, the doll did not move. The man mocked it, calling it a fraud, a worthless trinket. On the 4th night, the cameras went black at exactly 3:03 a.m. When footage resumed, the investigator was sprawled across the floor, eyes wide, throat crushed as though by invisible hands. The doll sat upright on his chest, its cracked smile angled toward the camera lens. People tried to destroy it. They burned it, drowned it, buried it. but every time it returned. Sometimes in the ashes of the fire, perfectly unharmed. Sometimes on the porch steps of the person who buried it, waiting like a patient guest. Some swore they heard it knocking at their doors at night. Others claimed it appeared inside locked rooms, sitting in the corner, watching until morning. And through it all, the legend grew. They say the doll was created by a woman named Eliza Morning, a seamstress who dabbled in forbidden rituals. Eliza had lost her daughter in childbirth and, consumed with grief, sought to trap her child's spirit inside the porcelain shell. But what she called back was no innocent soul. It was something older, darker, wearing the face of her daughter like a mask. The neighbors found Eliza weeks later, her body slumped in the rocking chair, the doll cradled in her arms. She had sewn her own lips shut with black thread, as if to silence whatever secret had been forced into her mouth. From that night on, the doll became an open door. Every new owner, every new victim, was another offering to the spirit trapped within. And the more souls it claimed, the stronger it grew. Shadows lengthened in rooms where it sat. Whispers bled through walls. Children giggled in voices not their own. And those who survived long enough swore they felt something just behind them whenever they turned their backs to the doll. Even now, it is said to rest inside a private collector's home, locked away in a cabinet of glass, surrounded by prayers and charms, but the doll has never stayed locked for long. And somewhere, as you listen to this, it may already be moving again. Its glass eyes searching, its crooked smile widening, waiting for the next child to call it a friend, waiting for the next family to invite it home. The years rolled on, but the doll never aged. Its porcelain face remained untouched by time, as if the very concept of decay refused to cling to it. Collectors whispered in hushed tones about its whereabouts, each more certain than the last. Some believed it had been sealed in the archives of a paranormal museum. Others claimed it was still lost in the ruins of the Henderson house. But the truth was far worse. The doll never stayed in one place for long. In the spring of 1994, a young couple named Daniel and Melissa found it in a roadside antique shop just outside Baton Rouge. They were newlyweds, eager to fill their new home with vintage decor. The shop smelled of cedar and mildew, the kind of smell that clings to your clothes long after you've left. In the far corner, resting on a dust-caked shelf, sat the doll. Its eyes reflected the weak light bulb above, and Melissa, drawn to it, without reason, insisted they buy it. The shopkeeper hesitated. His lips parted, his eyes narrowed, and for a moment it seemed as though he might refuse. But then, as if something unseen pressed him forward, he wrapped the doll in brown paper and handed it over. His last words to them were whispered, barely audible. "Don't let her hear you at night." They laughed at the warning, dismissing it as an old man's attempt at spookiness, but the first night in their home was anything but ordinary. Melissa awoke to the sound of faint footsteps in the hallway. Daniel was asleep beside her, his breathing steady. When she sat up, the sound stopped. She told herself it was the house settling, the creak of old wood, but her eyes drifted to the corner of the room where the doll now sat. They had left it in the living room. Melissa shook her husband awake. He grumbled, insisting she must have carried it up without remembering, but deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. By the third night, Melissa no longer doubted. The doll moved. Sometimes it was only a few inches, a tilt of the head or the shift of an arm. Other times it appeared in places it had never been placed. Once, they found it seated on the kitchen counter, surrounded by knives that had slid from the block. Another time, it appeared at the foot of their bed, its porcelain hand resting against the blanket as though about to climb up. Then the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like a radio tuned just between stations. Melissa would hear her name spoken from the corner of the room, so soft she questioned if she had imagined it. But the whispers grew clearer, sharper, until she could make out full sentences. "I'm here. I'm watching. Let me stay." Daniel tried to dismiss it all. He blamed stress, exhaustion, the power of suggestion. But when he came home late one evening and found Melissa standing in the hallway, staring at the wall with the doll cradled in her arms, his denial faltered. She was humming a lullaby he had never heard before, a lullaby in a language he didn't recognize. Her eyes, glassy and unfocused, stared past him, and when he touched her shoulder, she snapped from the trance, dropping the doll as though waking from a nightmare.